Ivy Snow moved quietly along the gravel pathway, her sturdy boots crunching softly beneath the towering oak trees that bordered the estate. The sprawling vineyard glowed under the soft moonlight, the rows of grapevines heavy with fruit and the scent of earth rising after a recent drizzle. Tonight was the annual Gala, a night where the estate's most affluent patrons gathered to celebrate the season's harvest with fine wines and elegant conversation. Dressed in her usual plain khaki pants and worn green shirt, Ivy carried a pair of gloves and a small gardening kit. Dirt stained her sleeves and fingernails, a contrast to the polished gowns and crisp tuxedos that shimmered under the ornate string lights draped above the outdoor reception area. Ivy kept her head down and her pace steady, attending to the delicate flower beds beside the long buffet table, making sure everything looked flawless for the guests. From behind her, occasional murmurs drifted through the air. Guests mistook her for an unnoticed servant, some whispering in amused tones about her rough country clothes. A man in a tailored suit chuckled as he glanced her way, saying to his companion, "Did you see that? Barefooted, probably doesn't even fancy tonight's vintage." The laughter melted into the ambience, unnoticed by Ivy, who kept moving diligently, her focus on the task. Laughter, chatter, and the clink of fine glassware filled the night as waiters slipped between groups, carrying trays of canapés and bottles of wine. Ivy's steady hands arranged fresh petals around the dessert plates, ensuring nothing disrupted the refined atmosphere. Suddenly, a crashing sound shattered the harmony, a piercing shriek from near the buffet. Guests turned in alarm as a large wild boar barreled through the rows of tables, knocking over trays and scattering the crowd in shocked chaos. Ivy's eyes narrowed, she took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to act. Chaos erupted as the wild boar, its bristled back gleaming under the string lights, charged through the buffet line like a freight train. Champagne flutes toppled, sending golden liquid spilling over white linen, silver platters clattered onto the wooden deck, and guests screamed, scattering in every direction. The sharp scent of crushed herbs and trampled flowers filled the air. A cluster of small children huddled near an overturned table, their wide eyes glistening with fear. Ivy's gaze snapped to them. Without hesitation, she moved swiftly toward the nearest group, her voice steady but soft. "This way, come with me. Stay close." She extended a hand, and the children grasped it tightly, their fingers trembling but trusting. Meanwhile, servers stood frozen, eyes darting between the boar and the fleeing guests, unsure what to do. Ivy scanned the area quickly and spotted the large wooden gates leading to the back of the estate, partially ajar. She motioned sharply to two young staff members nearby, nodding and pointing to the exit. "Open the gates all the way. We need an escape path," she commanded tersely. The two men exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed, pushing the gates wide open. Ivy grabbed a sturdy branch discarded near a toppled flower pot. It wasn't a weapon, but she knew from experience that keeping the boar's attention away from people was the key. She approached, her movements calm and deliberate, her eyes fixed on the animal's wild, darting gaze. "Easy now," Ivy murmured, her voice low and measured. She swung the branch lightly to one side, not threatening but guiding. The boar skidded to a halt, its snout twitching as it smelled the fresh air. Guests circled at a safer distance, held back by hastily forming human barriers. Many whispered incredulously about the modest woman wielding a stick with quiet authority. Some whispered about her clothes, mocking quietly at first, but the tone shifted as they saw how steady she was. Ivy noticed near the buffet's far end a group of children trapped between tables, surrounded by panicked adults and displaced guests piling backward. She reached them quickly, took their hands in hers, and led them through to safety. "Stay close. Keep quiet," she instructed. Every step was careful to avoid startling the boar again. Her eyes caught several nervous staff members standing behind the crowd. Without hesitation, she motioned toward the other side of the garden. Block those pathways. Don't let anyone accidentally back into the boar's line of sight. Quietly but firmly. She returned her gaze to the animal, watching as it shifted its weight, nostrils flaring. Ivy's mind raced through lessons from years of animal handling. She recalled how animals sense tension or fear. Calmness here was crucial. All right, big guy, let's help you out of here. Nobody wants trouble, Ivy said quietly, stepping closer. The boar grunted, moving with a surprising swiftness that belied its bulk. Ivy kept her branch raised, tapping the ground gently to guide the animal toward the open gates. The crowd's astonishment grew in silence, the initial screams now replaced by murmurs. Ivy's steady approach and clear commands contrasted sharply with the guests' earlier panic. The sound of a child sobbing nearby made her glance briefly, her voice softened. It's all right now. You're safe. Two handlers, alerted by Ivy, flanked the boar, holding ropes, makeshift tools from the maintenance shed, to help guide it if needed. Ivy coordinated smoothly with them, signaling when to advance or pause. Minutes that felt like eternity unfolded as Ivy and the team slowly herded the wild boar across the lawn toward safety. Ivy's voice carried through the quieting crowd, her tone firm yet soothing. Keep calm. We're almost done. When the animal finally slipped through the open gates and vanished into the wooded thicket, a ripple of relief spread through the guests. Ivy lowered the branch and wiped a sheen of sweat from her brow, but there was no room for pause yet. She checked on the children she had led away earlier, then helped staff duck fallen glass and rearrange scattered chairs. For a few heartbeats, the guests stared in silence, the mocking jibes that had brushed Ivy's ears before now vanished entirely. Where there had once been derision, respect began to grow. One elderly woman, her voice trembling, stepped forward and said, "Thank you, miss. You were incredible." The murmur of agreement passed from one cluster to another. A man, previously scoffing in a corner, found himself without words, his eyes fixed on Ivy's steady frame. Ivy acknowledged the thanks with a slight nod, her cheeks flushed but pride quietly shimmering beneath her modest exterior. The vineyard owner appeared, a severe line in his face softening as he approached. "Miss Snow, that was extraordinary. You kept everyone safe." Ivy simply replied, "Just doing what needed to be done." Her voice was low and sincere, avoiding any display of grandeur. As waiters returned to the buffet, now carefully reinstated, guests slowly resumed their places, still buzzing about the sudden, terrifying intrusion and Ivy's calm leadership. The string quartet hesitated before resuming, the music filling in the stillness left behind. Throughout the night, Ivy moved among the crowd, no longer invisible but watched with newfound interest. Conversations shifted, the rough work clothes no longer a mark of ridicule but a reminder of the woman who stood firm when chaos struck. In the corners of the garden, the usual whispers began anew, but now they carried words of admiration. "She handled that boar like she'd done it 1,000 times." A young woman held her phone up, quietly filming Ivy as she helped a waiter. "This woman saved the night," she murmured. The camera lingered on Ivy's unassuming face, framed by strands of loose hair catching the soft glow of the lanterns. By the time the gala drew to a close, Ivy's name was whispered in every cluster, the simple groundskeeper who had become the evening's unexpected hero. The fading glow of the gala's lantern still lingered in Ivy Snow's mind as she sat quietly in her modest apartment the following morning. The worn wooden floors creaked beneath her boots, and the faint aroma of brewing coffee mingled with the scent of old books lining the small bookshelf. Her gaze drifted to a faded photograph resting on the windowsill, a younger Ivy, smiling wide in denim overalls, standing beside a large brown horse under the pale sun of rural Oregon. She closed her eyes, tracing the memories back to where it all began. Growing up on a sprawling farm outside a small town, Ivy had been a child attuned to the rhythms of nature. From dawn to dusk she worked alongside her family, tending to crops, mending fences, and caring for the animals. The farm was a patchwork of fields, orchards, and pastures that stretched far enough to lose count of the rows. She remembered the first time she calmed a terrified calf that had broken through a rusted gate, the tiny creature trembling in panic. Ivy's small hands had soothed its twitching sides, whispering soft words until its breath evened out. That moment, the connection between human and animal, rooted something deep inside her. By adolescence, Ivy had blossomed into a capable young woman, her hands strong and deft from years of labor, her eyes sharp and steady. She took particular joy in working with the farm's animals, learning their quirks and habits with patient focus. The milestone came when she volunteered for the local wildlife rescue service, a small but dedicated group that answered calls for injured or displaced animals. She earned certification in animal behavior and first aid, driven by a fierce desire to help creatures in distress. Friends envied her skill, and the town praised her natural calm under pressure. Ivy was often the first responder when storms battered the region, leading stranded livestock to shelter or administering care to injured wildlife. Her reputation grew quietly but steadily. One fall afternoon, during a rescue mission in a remote forested area, Ivy's life took an unforeseen turn. She had trekked deep into the woods after reports of a trapped fox caught in an illegal snare. The sun was setting, and the ground was slippery from recent rain. As she carefully approached the injured animal, a sudden snap beneath her foot triggered a hidden trap, launching her downhill in a painful tumble. She was found hours later. A broken ankle and shattered shoulder ended her chances of full-time rescue work. The months in recovery were marked by frustration and isolation. The farm work was still manageable, but the prospect of returning to her former role dimmed. More difficult yet were the voices of her family, urging her to find steadier work, to support her young child, answering to responsibilities she'd never planned for at such a young age. With little choice, Ivy accepted groundskeeping and maintenance jobs, knowing they lacked the fulfillment she once held. Her new life in the city's wealthy estate world was quiet but isolating. Surrounded by extravagance and polished elegance, Ivy retained her humility, keeping to tasks that allowed her to remain out of the limelight. Watching from the sidelines as the grand events unfolded, she avoided the patronizing looks of guests and the gentle snide remarks about her plain clothes and rural accent. The glittering world felt both foreign and unreachable. Yet beneath the surface, Ivy held fast to her abilities. Even in menial tasks, she observed with a sharp eye the animals wandering the grounds, the nervous tick of a guest startled by unexpected wildlife. She listened, remembered, and prepared, knowing that the skills learned in the farms and forests were never lost, merely dormant. One quiet afternoon months before the gala, Ivy had noticed tracks in the garden, fresh hoofprints far too large for a deer. She followed cautiously, her heart steady despite a flicker of unease. She found a wild boar rooting through the compost near the estate's greenhouse. The animal's eyes met hers, tense but not aggressive. Over days, Ivy monitored the boar's movements, alerting the vineyard's management only to be met with dismissive shrugs. "It's just a wild animal," they'd said. "Handles itself fine." But Ivy knew, experience told her this was a creature capable of causing chaos if unchecked. Her daily small acts of vigilance were unacknowledged, but when the boar finally broke through to the Gala's buffet line, everything changed. The shock and fear that had rippled through the crowd had, for her, been familiar terrain. She had seen panic in animals and people alike and knew how to anchor both. Though Ivy's role had diminished from skilled rescuer to groundskeeper, her past shaped her reaction, to act quickly, calmly, and decisively amid chaos. As she guided the children away from danger, and steered the boar back through the estate's gates, her years of training unfolded naturally, a language spoken in gestures and tones honed by experience. Her pride in those moments was quiet. Ivy never sought to draw attention to the strengths she'd earned through hardship, preferring to remain in the shadows of a world that rarely embraced her. But the glances from guests, the sudden respect that mingled with surprise, tickled a small hope that maybe, here and now, her skills might find a place once again. As dawn broke over the city skyline, Ivy rose from the faded photo and stretched tired limbs. Outside, the first workers stirred in the estate grounds. She picked up her gloves and prepared for the day, carrying both the weight of her past and the possibility of what was to come, all tucked beneath her quiet, steady gaze. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the Vineyard estate as preparations for the day began. Ivy Snow moved through the garden paths with a calm purpose, returning to her familiar tasks amid the gentle hum of activity. Yet, the atmosphere was different now. The guests from the gala lingered in conversations that looped back to the previous night's unexpected drama. Word had spread quickly about the wild boar incident and, more importantly, about the modest groundskeeper who had stepped forward with unwavering calmness when others faltered. Ivy noticed the shift in glances. Subtle nods of recognition replaced the indifferent looks she'd grown used to. A couple of the younger waitstaff, who had previously barely acknowledged her presence, smiled and exchanged polite greetings as they passed. At the estate's small cafe, Ivy found herself approached by a well-dressed woman who introduced herself as Clara Winslow, a local journalist covering the event. Clara's eyes sparkled with admiration as she said, "Miss Snow, your quick thinking prevented what could have been a disaster. I'd love to share your story. Would you consider an interview?" Ivy's customary shyness nudged her to decline, but Clara's warm gentleness broke through her reserve. After a brief pause, Ivy nodded, surprised at her own willingness to step beyond her comfort zone. Back by the fountain, other guests began to seek her out. An elderly man, his voice edged with sincerity, said, "I once thought it was just a staff girl out there, but you showed us all what strength looks like." Smiles flickered in response, weaving through the crowd like a gentle tide. The vineyard owner, Mr. Marlowe, made his way toward Ivy mid-morning, his demeanor more relaxed now that the gala's tension had eased. "Ivy," he said, extending a hand, "I want to express my gratitude personally. Your presence of mind was remarkable. The estate is fortunate to have you." Ivy took his hand, feeling the weight of his words. It was a gesture that carried more than thanks. This was respect, unvarnished and genuine. As the day unfolded, social media buzz followed close behind. Guests uploaded videos from the gala, showing Ivy's steady approach, her confident movements as she guided the boar away, and the relief that followed. Online comments praised the groundskeeper turned heroine, lauding her cool-headedness in the moments when panic took hold. Local news outlets picked up the story, sharing snippets of video alongside images from Ivy's earlier life in animal rescue. One segment briefly recounted her volunteer work, showing photos of a younger Ivy tending to injured wildlife and working in natural settings far from the polished halls of the vineyard. The coverage celebrated her transition from volunteer rescuer to the quiet backbone of the estate's grounds. Within the estate's walls, the change was tangible. The once invisible woman was now approached for small conversations, compliments were exchanged. Fellow staff members, who had previously ignored passing greetings, found reasons to chat with her, seeking advice and sharing smiles. Stacy, a waitress who had once dismissed Ivy with a cool nod, approached hesitantly during a break. "Ivy," she said softly, "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel unrecognized. You handled everything last night like a pro." Ivy shook her head, the years of quiet endurance easing from her shoulders in that moment. "It's all right. We're all learning." Guests who had earlier whispered about her apparel now stopped to compliment her work ethic. A young couple studying event planning even asked for her opinion on landscaping choices, clearly valuing her insight. That evening, as the estate emptied, Ivy settled into quiet reflection. Messages of thanks from attendees pinged softly on her phone. One was from a mother of 2 young children Ivy had helped during the chaos, her words touched with gratitude and warmth. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You were our calm in the storm." Her modest apartment seemed different now, a place not just of endurance but of possibility. Ivy considered the stories shared online, the faces she'd seen change from dismissive to admiring. It was a curious feeling, this rising tide of recognition, a validation she hadn't sought but welcomed quietly. Next morning brought more surprises. A small package awaited her on the kitchen table. Inside was a letter from a regional wildlife conservation center, accompanied by an official invitation. The letter praised Ivy's actions at the gala and invited her to participate in a specialized emergency response training program designed for animal-related incidents. Ivy's heart pounded. The offer was unexpected, daunting, and at once familiar. Though hesitation stirred, the warmth of gratitude from those she had helped echoed louder. She thought of the children's faces, the thankful eyes of guests, and the newfound respect from colleagues. In that moment, Ivy felt something shift, a flicker of courage that began to weave its way through her doubts. She realized this recognition could be more than a fleeting moment, it could be the beginning of something renewed, a path back to the skills and purpose she had tucked away long ago. Slowly, she smiled. She would no longer remain invisible. Days passed since the gala, and Ivy Snow's quiet life began to ripple with unexpected change. The invitation from the Regional Wildlife Conservation Center sat on her kitchen table, its crisp paper reminding her of possibilities she'd long thought closed. The letter extended an offer to join an elite emergency response training program, a chance to refine her knowledge and skill, to step into a role that truly matched her talents. Yet, that evening, Ivy sat alone in her small apartment, the soft ticking of the clock seeming to echo the hesitation in her heart. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily. Her child, young and dependent, needed stability and care. The routines she had carved out during years of quiet groundskeeping grounded her. And beyond that, doubts unsettled her. Was she ready to re-enter a world from which she had been pulled too soon? Could she balance this newfound opportunity with the demands of family? She reflected on the gala night, the wild boar, the scattered guests, the sudden surge of chaos, and the calm she found deep within herself as she took control. More than that, she remembered the gratitude in others' eyes and the respect carried in their voices. It was a reminder of the strength buried beneath her simple work clothes, the capabilities honed quietly but indelibly. Morning light brought with it clarity. Ivy rose, folded the letter carefully, and resolved to reply. She would accept the invitation. The path ahead would hold challenges, but she wasn't alone anymore, not with the unexpected allies she'd found and the community of support growing around her. At the training center, nestled within a stretch of forest, Ivy arrived with a mixture of nerves and determination. The facility buzzed with activity, a blend of seasoned responders and newcomers, all gathered with a shared purpose. The crisp uniforms, the radios clipped to belts, and the array of specialized equipment felt both foreign and familiar. Her first day of instruction brought rigorous lessons, managing wildlife emergencies, administering swift first aid, coordinating with local authorities, and mastering safety protocols. The instructors respected her presence, often calling on her first-hand experience. Her calm demeanor and grounded approach earned quiet admiration among her peers. Between sessions, she found moments to glance around. Other trainees included young professionals eager to prove themselves, veterans sharing stories of demanding rescues, and newcomers like herself, each with reasons for seeking this path. Ivy felt a subtle kinship, a sense that this was where she belonged. Evenings were returned to family, her child's smile welcoming after long days, the fatigue melting away in the warmth of home. She shared snippets of her work, careful not to overburden but letting fragments of renewed purpose spill forth. Weeks unfolded with challenges and small victories. Ivy learned new techniques and strengthened old instincts. She led practice simulations with confidence, impressing instructors with her ability to combine practical knowledge with a level-headed approach born of real encounters. One instructor remarked, "You're a natural leader, Ivy. Your calm is contagious." News of her training spread through local circles tied to the Vineyard and conservation groups. Invitations came for her to speak at community events, sharing not only her expertise but also inspiring stories of resilience and humility. Each opportunity reinforced a growing truth: Ivy Snow was no longer just the quiet groundskeeper, but a respected voice in wildlife emergency response. On a crisp morning, after a particularly taxing training exercise, Ivy stood outside the center's doors, donning a freshly issued uniform embroidered with the insignia of the regional rescue team. The fabric hugged her shoulders differently than the worn garments she once wore, symbolizing a new chapter. Her phone buzzed, a message from the vineyard owner who had organized the gala. It read simply, "Proud of you, Ivy. The estate, and our community, is better because of you." Heart swelling, Ivy placed the phone in her pocket and pushed forward, stepping confidently toward the classroom with her fellow trainees. The woman who had once blended into the landscape, invisible and underestimated, now moved with the grace of one who had found her rightful place. Later that day, returning home, Ivy entered her apartment to find a small gift waiting, a handmade card from her child, adorned with glitter and scribbled words of encouragement. She knelt, embracing the child tightly, feeling the grounding love and the promise of future days shaped not by fear or hiding but by strength and purpose. As the sun dipped beyond the city skyline, casting long shadows across the vineyard's rolling hills, Ivy Snow stood at her window, gazing out at the familiar land transformed by twilight. The path that had once seemed distant stretched invitingly ahead, filled with new challenges and hope. No longer invisible, no longer afraid, Ivy welcomed the next steps with open arms.